Good evening, everybody. I've got some thoughts about hashtag FixTF2. I want to share them right now while the iron is hot, but the situation is very volatile, so they're going to go here on my second channel instead of my main one. As you might know, the TF2 community is miserable. It has been for probably about a decade now. There might be servers and communities that keep this stuff out of sight, out of mind, but the broader community's infighting has reached a boiling point. That much is obvious if you take one look at anything going on in the game's public subreddit, or if you pay any attention to the abundance of drama festering in the game's YouTuber circles. Seriously, the gossip, the hurt feelings, the public call-outs and retracted statements, the paragraph text messages sent in furious anger over things any reasonable outsider would find petty and ridiculous. If you didn't know any better, you'd think the TF2 community was nothing but a bunch of high school-aged hooligans. Oh wait. Now, the infighting and freakouts are not for no good reason, mind you. I'm sure I won't be the first to tell you about this so-called botting crisis. I'm gonna assume that you know what a Team Fortress 2 and a Valve is. Do you understand what the big fuss is around this game, and that you're here because you're looking for something more personal, insightful, or maybe incendiary? Well, here is my off-the-cuff attempt at delivering just that. First and foremost, I want to say that if you're here to show love for Team Fortress 2, if you're here to feel personally satisfied with your involvement in advocating for TF2 and its players' interests, then I suggest you support this petition and do everything you think is reasonable to make Valve's PR and pockets hurt for what they're doing. Here is what the official hashtag FixTF2 campaign dictates the goal of their movement to be, but if you want to hear my 2 cents on the failings and successes of this movement, and what I think needs to be heard by those involved and those following it, that's what the rest of this video is going to be for. For starters, I should get out of the way that I've always been very skeptical of these TF2 social media campaigns. I definitely have an annoying contrarian impulse that makes me want to scrutinize every inch of these things and sniff for bad actors or weaknesses, but I like to think it comes from a place of love. I know it can get a bit tiresome to hear people babble about how special this game is to them and that stories like those are a dime a dozen, but I've been a diehard fan of this stupid-ass PUDIS simulator since 2009, which I've recently learned makes my Merc badge literally older than some of the people who watch my main channel videos. And over these last 15 years, I've witnessed the start of quite a few arcs in the game's history that are very depressing, and are the reason I've turned into the TF2 cynic I am today. For one, the obvious. Valve no make update, Valve quiet, Valve only care about Steam Dota counter, Valve bad. It's always a bit funny to me when I hear a video of someone saying, oh, Valve has abandoned this game for over 5 years now. Because first of all, the bots on their own have been around since July 2016. The game has specifically had a spin botters flooding matchmaking problem for almost a decade now. You can look it up. Spin bots in casual mode have literally been a problem for as long as casual mode has existed. But second of all, the game has been functionally abandoned and dysfunctional for much longer than the start of Meet Your Match. Valve has really not actively supported TF2 with a full team producing their own new original content since I'd say around 2014. Love and War was probably the last major update for TF2 that I think counts as an earnest love letter from Valve to the community. And by 2015, popular TF2 YouTubers were astonished to see even a single finished new Valve-created map get added in an update.
First of all, 4 new maps. That is something we are not used to. Especially one map that Valve made that's not in a beta? Why is this map not in beta? And why are the other 2 maps still in beta? You know what I mean? Like the Cactus Canyon's still in beta. Who made this? Something's going on there.
The worst part is, this map that German was astonished to see added to the game wasn't even actually new. If you didn't know, Powerhouse was not a map made in 2015 as a focused effort for a new update. It was an unfinished map dating back to 2007 that a person at Valve who hadn't touched TF2 in years randomly decided to touch up and send out on a whim out of boredom. The only Valve-made maps that the game has seen since Powerhouse have been Hellfire, an unpolished manpower map that they created in 2014, and Mercenary Park in 2017, which last year's GigaLeak exposed was actually yet another recycled design dating back to the late 2000s that someone at Valve gave a facelift. Simply put, Valve has not designed a new original level for this game in 10 years. In those 10 years, pretty much all we've received, aside from a few tiny patches and updates that are so rare Valve cheekily named one the Blue Moon Update, is a monotonous series of microtransaction-centric updates so predictable that when the community learned there was basically only 2 people maintaining the game, one not even being a full-time Valve employee, it wasn't even remotely a surprise to most of us. A set of TF2 maps and hats created by community workshoppers varying in quality and thematic cohesion, and in the last year or so, a couple of, in my opinion, hollow, community-contributed game modes made possible by a lone contractor at Valve porting over Left 4 Dead's vScript functionality. And the worst part is that these updates with these new game modes have without fail been completely broken on launch pretty much every single time. It's a real spit in the face. Other than that, we've received a transparent, greedy, and failed attempt to port over and emulate CSGO's ever-profitable skin system to TF2, one new contentious set of paywalled weapons and contracts in 2017 with Jungle Inferno, and a matchmaking update that has completely destroyed the game. It's not hard to see how the TF2 community has become so bitter. This also plays into what I like to call the YouTubers win, players lose clause. People like Banny and Uncle Dane, who I respect a lot mind you, got consulted for new updates and an exciting Valve tour or whatever. They got to feel heard. They got to create a new video about the new update, ride some more TF2 hype. Then the players were left picking up the pieces of whatever disaster Valve and these YouTubers accidentally synthesized. I mean, they're YouTubers and not game designers for a reason. This was the case with Meet Your Match, where people at Valve were catering to the whims of a niche competitive scene which YouTubers uniquely adored, but that the broader community was mostly ambivalent to. And it was the case to a smaller extent with Jungle Inferno as well. All of this points to what I think is the real story of TF2's post-launch life. After trailblazing the modern live service shooter format that went on to be a cancer on the face of PC gaming, and fucking around aimlessly for a few years, Valve lost interest in TF2. Then, upon seeing the colossal threat that was Overwatch, made one final hurrah, doing the bare minimum to try and turn TF2 into both a viral esport like Overwatch and a gambling money printer on the level of Counter-Strike. Failed miserably at both directives, and since then simply do not want to play with the TF2 community anymore. They have not wanted to design anything new for us since 2014. They only want to, at best, listen to YouTubers and add a fucking banana, and a community map with a cute seal to pacify us. We are simply not important to them, and haven't been for over 10 years. And we need to understand that. We should not act like Valve is a friend who we're gonna get back on the good graces of and bring back to our side any second. And that's the other arc I've witnessed. In the 10 or so years that all this has been marinating, the community has only gotten more and more rabid. I've witnessed being a TF2 fan go from being a joyous thing, something universally seen as awesome and sort of counterculture in a cool way, to something people have begun to see as the calling card of whiny, obnoxious band kids. I said it on Twitter the other day, but my merc badge is starting to feel more like a scarlet letter at this point. You can just look at how outsiders view the TF2 community. If you went back in time to 2014 and showed someone how tired people are of the game and its followers, they'd be astonished. Every day, more and more people quasi-ironically say hashtag kill TF2. More and more memes about how TF2 fans have become a force that is uncouth, vulgar, and obnoxious. And the worst part is that they're not entirely wrong. Alright, now that I've bloviated about TF2 for several minutes, I guess my ultimate question I'd like to pose to the viewer is, how far is too far for TF2? Here's an instance where you could argue consumer law is failing to protect the interests of a customer base currently beholden to an unflinching giant with an effective monopoly on the industry of PC gaming. For some reason, the people who have organized Save TF2 and Fix TF2 have always erred on the side of extreme caution regarding this. The original movement was toothless. It had no bite. It basically served as nothing but a big circle jerk to glaze TF2 and Valve as far as I'm concerned, and it was lucky it reached as far as it did. That's not to say it wasn't a step in the right direction, or that I hold anything against the people who organized and participated in it. Hell, I participated in it from the word jump. But I fear that every time the community tries one of these big social media hurrahs, the chances of us getting a meaningful response from Valve are only getting exponentially lower. So why are we being pussies? The people who run this movement don't seem to want to risk going any further than what would provide bulletproof PR. My instinct is to say, fuck it, scorched earth. The game is broken. The people who pay for it are getting scammed. Tell people to stop playing TF2. Review bombing is a step in the right direction no matter what some influencer says. I think whoever's in charge, if they truly care about getting their message across, could be leading an all-fronts review bombing of all of Valve's products. Imagine Portal 2 losing its decade-long rank as the highest-rated game on Steam because of TF2 protests. Imagine the headline and the PR stink there. Now cool it for a second, because that's my innermost rabid TF2 fan talking. That innate toxicity and craziness that's dormant in every fucking TF2 fan, I guess. To be honest, when you stare at things from the outside, I think most reasonable people look at all this shit and go, man, you're still on about TF2? Didn't you realize Valve gave up in 2014? And it's not like these other communities did anything to deserve being roped into this disastrous mess over a 17-year-old hat game, regardless of any problems they do have. That being said, I do think the TF2 community should definitely be teaming up with the CS2 players to shake the room about how shitty it is that Valve is launching a new multiplayer shooter, while their other ones rot and fester. So, I guess that's what it all boils down to. At what point are we taking it too far? What are the standards for activism of this kind? We all seem to agree that last time we didn't do enough. But if I point out, I don't know, that Meet Your Match is the sole reason for us being in this shitfest in the first place, and the Meet Your Match was spearheaded and developed by a single Valve employee who wasn't even hired at the company at the time of the game's release, and then promptly abandoned it once his pipe dream of transforming the game totally backfired and left the remaining players bitter and miserable. In my eyes, an outsider who came in and steered the game in the direction of what YouTubers thought it should be, do I even really want the people who did that to come back and light this trash fire up even more? Fuck it. Final thoughts. There's some problems I see with the current movement, but I support it because I like TF2 a lot, and I do think it has a good shot. The first thing I noticed, though, is that the branding uses MVM robots, which are cool and ominous. Unfortunately, this also makes the bots seem cool and ominous. There's a school of thought that we shouldn't romanticize or gas up the impact of mass shooters, and instead bully them post-mortem for being cringy and weird, to dissuade copycats. Similarly, I think we should be showing the bots as they actually are. Sad, automated manifestations of neglect. Much like TF2's updates for the last 7 years. The second thing I notice is that a petition is boring as shit. It's just hard to be excited about. I'm not gonna say it holds no merit, but the fact that the big secret thing this campaign has over the last one is basically like writing a letter to Santa Claus is kinda crazy. You've had 2 years to plan this, guys. Third, I think putting the main focus of the movement on anything other than this game becoming an unplayable scam is a bit of a misdirection. I think the public hysteria around what bots are saying in in-game chat is honestly more likely to inspire Valve to do something drastic that helps no one, like further restrictions on innocent players' communications as we got last time, than it is to inspire a good, meaningful change. So I think it's better to keep the magnifying glass primarily on the game itself and not just the actions of the bot hosters, no matter how awful they might be. Most of that stuff is beyond the scope of the game and beyond the scope of Valve anyway. There's nothing about TF2's communication channels that make it a uniquely good space for spreading doxes or whatever. Getting games journalists to write shit is good, but I want you to remember that it's actually not that much of a victory. Games journalists have written entire articles about my shitty-ass videos I made when I was 19 years old. It's kind of just their job to scour the internet and look for random bullshit to talk about, and Valve has weathered PR storms worse than a Kotaku article. They completely ignored the ADL when they ran a campaign accusing Steam of harboring Nazi terrorists. The unfortunate truth is that live service games are supposed to be disposable, like fast food. But TF2 accidentally pioneered the genre despite simply being just too good to be a live service game. Spending 9 years developing a beautiful work of art just to turn it into mobile game bloatware is the equivalent of spending 2 hours baking a single cookie. You know, I set out to write this video in the hopes it would do something constructive, so I want to remind both myself and everyone watching that while TF2 is one of the best and most culturally rich video games ever made, and it's one that's worth caring about, it is still just a video game. I don't even really play this game anymore. I spend more time in TF2 Classic, because in my opinion it offers an experience much closer to the game I fell in love with all those years ago, without any of the ethical or monetary baggage. I've sold pretty much all of my items ages ago, and I suggest you do the same.
I don't think it'll move the needle as much as you hope, man.
What if
Because
it's the right thing to do, Easy? What if it's the right thing to tell people to pull out of this game before they lose all their money on it? What if it's the right thing to tell them to stop gambling in this fucking stupid-ass 17-year-old game about hats?
That being said, I do believe there are valuable roots here with this fixed TF2 movement that do have the potential to blossom into something greater. One thing I think is really important in any respectable activist movement, though, is a list of reasonable demands. Ones that are more direct, simple, and attainable than simply demanding the notoriously lazy Valve to up and create a state-of-the-art anti-cheat software out of thin air. Outline to them how the current rigid structure of TF2's matchmaking and its strictly segregated teams have built a culture around constant requeuing, which automated cheaters are obviously better fit to endure than real players are. Do Valve even know that these simple changes they made 7 years ago, like removing the ability to join your friend in a casual game, or even switch teams, have not only killed some of the game's original spirit, but also directly contribute to the futility players feel anytime they're faced with the task of cleaning up a server full of bots? We should be directly advocating for these changes' reversals. Even influencing something as small as a decision to reverse the free-to-play communication ban would be a step in the right direction. That's where my head is at right now. Give Valve something tangible and coherent to work with on a small scale. And hopefully, we can build toward a better tomorrow for the game. If not, fuck it, I guess I'll become a Fallout YouTuber or something. If any of those ideas I just spewed out sounded all promising, let me know in the comments, and maybe I can try to make a follow-up video to flesh them out more. If you think they suck doo-doo out of a fucking butt, you should sound off too. This game means way too much to way too many people to not at least try to stimulate this dialogue. My parting message to you all is to try your best to be happy and healthy, and not let the miserable black hole this beautiful game has become subsume you. If you sat through this video, regardless of if you agree with or disagree with the things I've said in it, I hope you have a good day. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.